US presents outlines of a durable, lasting peace to Ukraine, Russia and Europe. Day after Russia kills civilians in Sumy, Kremlin claims deliveries of Taurus missiles will lead to escalation. Another topic to talk about. And a Blitz Talk, watch a raw, frank and honest interview with American scout sniper and a Republican who voted for Trump and who fought in Ukraine for 728 days in a row right on the front line, Matthew Samson. Good afternoon, my name is Henry Keane and we are UATV English-speaking Ukrainian state media in everyday persuasion to deliver hard truth in easy terms for the whole free world directly from Ukraine. America provides outlines of a durable and lasting peace. Well, that means provided Ukraine to Russia and to Europe the outlines of a durable and lasting peace, U.S. State Department spokesperson Tammy Bruce said on April 17th. The U.S. has communicated the proposal in Paris with Ukrainian and European officials. U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio communicated the same to Russia over a phone call. Rubio spoke today with Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov. The secretary conveyed to his Russian counterpart the same message the U.S. team communicated to the Ukrainian delegation and our European allies in Paris, Bruce said. The spokesperson said the proposal was welcomed in Paris. The encouraging reception in Paris to the U.S. framework shows that peace is possible if all parties commit to reaching an agreement, Bruce adds. The United States has led separate talks with Ukraine and Russia and Saudi Arabia to reach ceasefire, as we know. And on April 6, Zelensky said Russia is rejecting an unconditional ceasefire because it simply wants to continue launching missile strikes from the Baltic Sea. Well, Moscow obviously is unwilling to move forward on a peace deal with Ukraine, and Russian authorities knowingly have listed maximalist, unreal demands in the ceasefire negotiations with Ukraine and the U.S. While Ukraine has already agreed to U.S. proposed full 30-day ceasefire, saying on March 11 that Kyiv is ready if Russia also agrees to the terms. So far, Moscow has refused. Well, of course Moscow has refused. Why would they agree? They kill civilians and children in Ukraine every day freely, and America only calls it a mistake. So why stop? Then they kill even more, and then Germany is still not really ready to send them Tauruses, fearing escalation. Well, what is this escalation, dear world? Name us in Ukraine a figure of Ukrainian children murdered by Putin daily that is not an escalation already. Well, you know what? Maybe we should look deeper into the matter in our next topic. The Kremlin is so full of... let's take it step by step. The supply of long-range German Taurus missiles to Ukraine will lead to an inevitable escalation, the Kremlin dictator's mouthpiece, Peskov said on April 14th. Mouthpiece's statement comes as Friedrich Merz, Germany Chancellor in waiting, suggested on April 13th that long-range Taurus missiles could be used to target strategic Russian military infrastructure. Wow! Merz added the Taurus missiles may be shipped to Ukraine if European partners support the move, and the UK and France are very likely to support it. And here comes, according to Mr. Merz's statements, he is an advocate of strengthening the position and supporter of various steps that can and will inevitably lead only to further escalation on the situation around Ukraine, end of quote by Dmitry Mouthpiece Peskov. Well, Mouthpiece commands come just a day after Russia's brutal attack on the city center of Sumy, killing 35 people, including 2 children. So, Russia kills 9 children in Kryvyi Rih, 2 kids more in Sumy. It wounds more than 200 civilians on Ukrainian streets during only 1 week here in Ukraine. And the attack on Sumy was planned on Palm Sunday and was one of the deadliest attacks ever during this war. Russia used cluster munitions, and Trump calls it a mistake. And Peskov threatens more escalation. But it is not about them, really, Peskov or Trump or anybody else. As both Putin and new American administration would love to still have the outgoing Chancellor, Olaf Scholz, as he has repeatedly blocked the delivery of Taurus missiles due to the staged, unjust, imaginary, all-European concerns of crossing Russian red lines, whatever that means, an escalation that follows. And Putin feeds exactly these fears, investing billions in propaganda. He plays Europe as if it's toy. He acts by killing more and more Ukrainians every day. Kryvyi Rih and Sumy last week, Dnipro yesterday, Kharkiv today, hundreds of wounded, dozens of our kids shred to pieces literally by cluster munition every single day. And people like Olaf Scholz and alike in Europe and America are on everyday basis, seriously, selling to Putin the murderer the substance that never belonged to them, our Ukrainian lives. Well, here it is, the hard truth in easy terms. Olaf Scholz is a coward. Not only is he a coward, he is also an appeaser of evil, who encourages evil to grow its criminal appetite. And not only is he a coward and the appeaser of evil, but also a political prostitute. Here I must apologize to prostitutes. With all due respect, I always consider prostitution an honest profession. You talk, you negotiate, you pay money and get your thing. Simple and fair. There is no confusion. This is why Olaf Scholz is not just a prostitute, but a political prostitute. A dangerous, morbidly cowardly political entity created confusion, and on whom almost all European safety recently depended, by the way. Well, thank God Merz is not Scholz, and this is why Russian Tsar's mouthpiece is suddenly resonating loudly these days, because he's afraid. As German Tauruses can deliver him a message indeed from those parents of Ukraine who have lost their children. And, oh my God, we will. By the way, the previous Biden administration and the UK also allowed strikes with long-range missiles against military targets on Russian soil in late 2024, namely in the Russian border regions of Kursk and Bryansk. And Ukraine has already received American-supplied ATACMS, as well as Scalp Storm Shadow cruise missiles from France and the UK. So both Washington and London have already permitted Kyiv to use these systems to strike targets within Russian-occupied territories, including Crimea. And we have put these missiles to very good use, I would say, so far. But we don't kill Russian children on streets. We're not Russians, you know. We retaliate, but we retaliate like warriors do, not like cowards. With Merz poised to take office following his Christian Democrats' election win, the decision to supply Taurus missiles could soon return to the political agenda. It still remains uncertain whether the future of coalition partners from the Social Democrats will back the move, but if they won't, then SPD joins new coalition, SPPPE, Cowards and Political Prostitutes Party of Europe, that Olaf Scholz can easily head again. Hello, my name is Henry Keen. We are UATV English. I'm here in the center of a beautiful Kiev. You don't even feel that the war is in the air, but it is. And I'm here with someone who I sincerely believe is the most interesting American in Ukraine, because he is a Republican. He was fighting for Ukraine for more than 2 years in a row. I sincerely welcome you back, sir, Mr. Matthew Samson. Hi.
Thank you, sir. I really appreciate that. And good morning.
Good morning. Obviously, you returned from front lines, from Zaporizhia, right?
I did late last night. Yes, I was there over by the front lines about an hour or so to outside of Zapo, the city center, checking out the front lines. I wanted to see firsthand what the situation is there with former unit that I used to work with, and talk to some of the commanders there, and talk to some of my former peers that are there on the ground right now.
And
it was very interesting to be able to talk to them and to hear from them what is going on. So some of it doesn't line up too much with current headlines. I know that one of the questions that I asked one of the commanders there, which has been doing this work since 2011, so this is his profession. This is what he knows.
Right.
He's within Ukrainian GUR, the military intelligence here in Ukraine. And I asked him that over the last few months, with the change of the administration in the United States, how's that directly affecting the front line? And all he really had to say was that there's a little bit of a morale issue. overall, the individual at the front has pretty high morale, and they are very happy to continue fighting for every inch, every meter of ground here in Ukraine. The part of the morale issue that comes into play, however, is that it seems more and more Ukrainians are feeling like they are being left out of the conversations between the United States and Russia. That the Ukrainian people want to feel that they are 100% always part of the conversation of what's happening in Ukraine between the United States and Russia, and that this doesn't become a conversation only between Russia and the United States. So there's that going on. I did ask, how is the front line being affected as far as weapons and supplies? And personally, based on what I've seen in headlines, I was really surprised when he told me it's not. He said that's not what the headlines are saying that I've been seeing going around the media of.
Then where's the gap between the headlines and the actual situation on the front? What's going on?
I think the headlines that say that the front line is being negatively affected by recent changes in the administration are much more exciting than the actual truth of what's going on.
That's just media thing, media trick, isn't it?
It's something that happens from time to time. You know, it's not every reporter and not every media outlet that's doing that, but it sure is more exciting. And also the area that I'm able to comment on is really just the Zaporizhia area. So it could be different in other areas, but when I was talking to this commander, he made that clear to me as well, that he's only able to directly talk about the Zaporizhia area and the front lines in that region. However, he's also able to tell me what he hears about. And so far, he has not heard of any ammo problems that are new today that were not currently going on 6 months ago, 8 months ago, 10 months ago. It's the same ammunition problems for the same calibers, for the same weapon systems. Of whatever is the shortage today was the same shortage 6 months ago, 8 months ago, 10 months ago. And that current administration policies that are going on at the White House really so far have no negative effect on supplies actually getting to the front line.
Well, I believe after last time we talked, you said Trump is going to win, and I think this is going to be a good thing for Ukraine. Do you still believe that?
I do, absolutely. And just me being able to go to the front line and at a minimum, seeing that the front line is not being affected in any negative manner, that is providing some amount of evidence to support that if the Trump administration was actively trying to hurt the front line, he's been in office long enough that I think he would have been able to do so already by now.
Okay, so you say there's a plan, like a major plan that Trump has to make Ukraine win in the end, or at least to end this war at a decent point, to make a peace just and hopefully long-lasting? Because what I've talked to my colleagues in American media, they say that they don't believe that Donald Trump has a plan whatsoever.
So Donald Trump, I've never met the man, I've never talked to him, but he doesn't appear to be the type of person that goes around making decisions without a plan. So maybe, but with everything I've heard about the guy for most of my life, I'm 37 now, and he's been in pop culture off and on for way before I was even born.
Right.
So I've seen him in, just making showings in movie. He was in Home Alone. He was in Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, which is an American sitcom with Will Smith. He's been around doing a lot of different things, just kind of within the media, that he doesn't appear to be that type of person whatsoever. And it's the same thing for me. I'm not the type of person that goes around just randomly.
Come on, you're military. You just ought to have a plan. You have to have a plan. All right. So
even my trip here right now, that this was something that was planned because I'm returning back to the capital in Washington D.C. this weekend for the Ukraine Action Summit that's happening next week. So that's the primary purpose that I'm here, to get updates of what's actually happening here, because I haven't been here since November. I was taking care of some personal stuff back in the U.S. So that's just an example that I don't go around just randomly doing stuff. I have a very clear vision, a very clear plan. So I would have to assume that someone that has accomplished as much as Donald Trump, whether we like the guy or not, it has nothing to do with it, does so because he has a plan. And I think him being someone that has lobbied politicians probably for a lot of his career, and then one day decides, I want to walk into the White House, and then he wins an election first try, Yeah, I think that's evident. He does have a plan. We may not agree with it. We may not know what the plan is. And for any president, usually the average citizen will never know the details of any presidential plan because it's really not our job to know. We don't have access to that information for good reason.
Okay. Right, well, I have plenty of questions. That way we don't have that much time. But you said Ukrainian action, you're going back to United States and there's going to be some sort of a summit or something?
Yes, so very similar to what I did approximately 1 year ago.
Right.
1 year ago was the Ukraine Action Summit. It was the fourth one that they've done. So they do it twice a year, once in the fall, once in the spring. So September was number 5. I wasn't able to attend that one. But this one that's coming up next week is number 6. So they show up there. Last year, it was over 500 people representing 47 states for the U.S. And
these are Ukrainians?
These are Americans.
Americans.
These are American Ukrainians. These
Right,
are Ukrainian refugees.
Right.
I'm sure there's even folks in between there that may not necessarily be Americans, but they are pro-Ukrainian.
Okay. So attitude towards you?
It's been
because they know you're a Republican, right? But you were a Republican fighting for Ukraine, having actually no connection whatsoever to Ukraine, fighting actually for human values in the trenches, risking your life for 2 years in a row.
But pretty close. I am now, I believe today is day 728 that I've spent in Ukraine since the full-scale invasion. I first started with 635 days consecutively before I left Ukraine, and I believe that makes me the longest-serving U.S. citizen in Ukraine doing combat operations. That's a former U.S. veteran that was here for consecutive days. You know, there's Americans that got here before me, but they, you know, left the country, went to Europe, went back home for maybe a couple weeks here and there, something like that.
Right.
But for consecutive days, I believe I'm the longest-serving American fighting for Ukraine that wasn't previously living here. And you are correct. I have no connection to this country. I don't have any relatives here. There's no one in my bloodline, as far as I know, that's connected to this country. 4 years ago, if you would have said the word Ukraine to me, I honestly would have no idea what you're talking about. I just didn't know. I know quite a bit of war history, a decent amount about the Soviet Union, but the word Ukraine, it was something that I personally just didn't really know.
Well, you have some friends in Ukraine.
I do now.
You do now.
I do now. So with the pro-Ukrainian community, there are some that are very thankful for what I'm doing, and that's pretty cool.
Some are not.
It's interesting that some are not, or I should say, they are until we get to the part of the conversation where they ask the question, am I Republican, am I Democrat? Because generally, at least in especially with the headlines, the Ukrainian issue appears to be a Democrat issue, which it's not. It's fully a bipartisan issue, that both sides are supporting Ukraine. Not every representative. And
that's right.
And it's not their job to represent, you know, everything that the individual wants. That's not why the representatives exist. But there's quite a few that refuse to talk to me once they find out that I'm a Republican that is fighting for their country.
Fighting for their country. They knew that. You're like military, fighting against Russians in the trenches of Zaporizhia or Kharkiv, wherever you've been, and they don't want to talk to you anymore because you're Republican.
There's times where I'm standing in front of them exactly as you see me right now, wearing the same stuff that I wore in the trenches, fighting for my life. Russians trying to kill me and my comrades, Ukrainians, foreigners, Americans, people from all over Europe.
And they succeeded, actually, because some of them are not with us.
So some of them are dead, yes, unfortunately. You know, even here, you know, I carry my remembrance of a Ukrainian Canadian and a U.S. Navy SEAL that were killed out here. And, you know, this is only 2 out of the many foreigners that have been killed here fighting for what we believe in. And so some of these, once they find out I'm a Republican, there's been a couple that have looked me straight in the eye and said, you should go kill yourself. And there's no smile after it. It's not sarcasm. There's no laughter.
I believe that there is no laughter.
And it's
help me to understand. These people are Ukrainians, pro-Ukrainian people living in America, got their backs quite covered, right, with all the things that America can provide, and knowing that you are someone who is fighting for the values that they say they would have been fighting, would have fighting for, so they said, what? You have to go and kill yourself.
There's been some that have said those exact words. There's been others that said that have told me that me dying at the front lines is the only thing I could ever do that would be productive to society. There's others that have said just thank you, and I disagree. But the ones that stand out the most are the ones that say that I am not worthy to live because I have a different perspective than they do.
Do you understand that alone could have made quite a weapon of you against Ukraine, against military aid, anything? And you don't have to come here, and you can be like, I don't know what to say. I'm at loss of words, actually. I mean, no, I could disagree. I disagree with at some points with you strongly.
Sure.
Like Trump plan and everything. And I would love to discuss that and dialogue. But knowing that you spilled your blood and lost your comrades for me being able to sit here and doing that very interview, I believe you deserve a bit of respect from my side. And please don't go and kill yourself, Matthew.
I would think so also. And it's interesting, like I've had some people yell at me that I should not go on camera and say anything that would provoke Putin, especially in use of nuclear weapons.
Right.
Which is, I guess I can understand that a little bit, but I fully disagree with I should.
Well, you're a Marine Scout sniper. I mean, you can get the sniper rifle instead, camera, and that could be useful in your hands. I'm sure you've put it to good use. And all right, what's next? Do you think? Just let's speculate. Your plans are more or less clear, but in terms of Republican Party and Donald Trump, what do you think is going to happen next? Do you think that military aid will be consistent enough and fast enough delivered to Ukraine until there will be just peace? Do you believe that Donald Trump wants just peace for Ukraine, or is going to be a swift peace deal at whatever the cost is for Ukraine?
I believe that if there's going to be the second option of just a quick peace deal, regardless of what Ukraine wants, that I believe that would have happened already. And I believe we would have seen that evidence either in January or February. But here we are, we're in April, and last I checked, that's not what's going on, at least in the headlines. What I see in the headlines is a possible ceasefire coming in the near future, so that way negotiations can continue, hopefully with less people dead between now and then, both Ukrainians and Russians. From my personal perspective of that, and what is common in my culture, is that every human life deserves respect. Even if they're doing things that we disagree with, that every human life deserves disrespect. And if they need justice, then they deserve justice. And that justice might be going to prison. We use the death penalty at times in my country, but that's an entire process that happens, that every human has that respect. And we exercise that even with fighting the Taliban when I was in Afghanistan with the United States government and the Marine Corps, that the moment that the enemy fighter stops fighting, it's our duty to do everything we can to keep them alive. It's the same thing that we do here at the front lines. Once the Russians stopped fighting and they said, I surrender, it's our duty to do everything we can to keep them alive.
Well, these Russians are very lucky to meet you.
They are.
Your people, not Ukrainians, not me actually, just by the way.
Sure.
I've been in Bucha, I've seen a pitting ground full of dead bodies and the faces disfigured because they were shot in the faces, hands tied behind their backs, and that changed me.
Oh, I would expect that it would, and that's something that should have some amount of change in anybody.
Right.
The cool thing about treating a Russian soldier with human respect, both when fighting and not fighting, that when we're fighting, we're generally equal peers on the battlefield, that they are representing their ideals, I'm representing my ideals, we clearly disagree, and we're going to shoot at each other until one of us is no longer...
Until one of us is with a sniper rifle.
Sometimes, yes. So
do you believe that this is a dialogue, ideals, representing ideals? What ideals the Russians are really representing? They want this land.
They do, and from our perspective, some of their ideals are flat out wrong. It was the same thing looking at Nazi Germany, that there's folks there, a lot of them that were representing their ideals. And those of us in other countries realized, I disagree with your ideals, they're wrong, and we will fight you to the point of changing that completely.
I
Either
disagree
stopping,
to your ideals to the point, because this point is that you cannot negotiate with me how it is more legal to kill me,
Sure.
to take my land, to rape my women, and to abduct my children. There is no point of negotiation.
Sure. So for like here at the front lines, for example, when we take Russian prisoners, one of the cool things about that is in that moment, we, and at this point I'm going to say we, as in myself and the rest of us on the front line, so including
Right.
Ukrainians
Right.
and the other foreigners, that we on the Ukrainian side get to actually show evidence that our side is different.
Right.
Because we know for a fact that when it's our side that's having a bad day and the Russian side is having a better day, that there's a high probability that we may not be taken prisoner at all. We might be executed. And if we are taken prisoner, I believe every single prisoner, if at least most of them, that Russia has taken has tortured that individual to some extent. From my understanding, when we see the prisoner exchanges happening, all the prisoners coming off the Russian bus are starving to death. Generally, the prisoners coming off the Ukrainian bus have gained weight because they're eating pretty well. They're being treated as basic human beings. We could disagree with each other all we want to, but humans are humans. So we're able to show evidence that our side is different. And also, selfishly, on our side, every Russian soldier that we take prisoner and keep them alive, that's a Ukrainian that gets to come home during a future prisoner exchange. So if we went around and just executed every Russian soldier that's surrendering, then that means that's a lot more Ukrainians that are going to be stuck as prisoners that don't get to come home. And some of them will most likely be killed as prisoners that will never see their families again. So for that, not only are we showing that our side is different, but then we're also providing an invaluable service to the family members that are wherever they are, where their loved one is a prisoner of war in Russia. That when I grab this Russian soldier, I protect him with my life as the Russians are still trying to kill all of us. The Russians don't just stop shooting us because we have Russian prisoners. They still try to kill us. That now I'm risking my life in Ukraine to protect Ukraine and also protect Russian soldiers that have surrendered. I've been part of doing operations like that. That every single one of those I see that as this is a Ukrainian that eventually gets to come home and gets reunited with their family. And that's a service that I'm providing to that Ukrainian's family and to the Ukrainian that is unfortunately a prisoner of war. And that's something that we know the other side does not share.
Your attitude towards Ukraine, did it change when you've heard these outrageous words that go and kill yourself?
It really did not. It just gave me a better perspective. The Kremlin is horrible at a lot of things. Russia isn't known for doing a whole lot that helps the rest of the world. But the Kremlin is annoyingly good at their propaganda and disinformation. They've been targeting the United States for decades and decades and decades. I know some people will say that American politics were fine until the word Trump came into it. And there's no evidence to support that, because we had problems in American politics of division before this Trump guy decided to start running for office. So
Not much. I believe it's obvious.
It should be obvious.
Exactly.
But I've had folks look me in the eye and say, no, that was only Trump. Everything was fine before Trump. And when I asked, like, do you have evidence of that? Like, if you look at McCain and Obama running against each other when Trump had nothing to do with any of that, other than, Trump was supporting McCain, which, by the way, McCain, strong supporter of Ukraine. There's a street here named after him. Because
I know. That's what I was thinking about that right now.
So using that as an example, that some of Trump's background is supporting candidates with large amounts of money, trying to get them into the White House, that they also support Ukraine. Like, one of the things that McCain is known for is supporting Ukraine, and the amount of times he's come back and forth to Ukraine, that I believe he might be one of the only U.S. politicians that has a Ukrainian street named after him. Like, that's how instrumental he is. So for Trump to support that, that just provides us evidence that counters that everything was basically fine until Trump ran for office. We had division when McCain and Obama were running against each other. We had division when Bush was running against Al Gore and all that. So
It never was fine. There wasn't
exactly.
a moment in time that
Exactly.
it always fine. Until you open the door and take a look deeper into it. It's always an influence, a trouble. There's always a story. Everyone has the weak sides, the strong sides.
I will say this, and I'm sure that some of you back home might disagree with this or get angry about it. But there was one dude that ran for office that just on this context of some of the issues that go on with American politics, that there was so much division in that time, that there was such a large group of people that said, if he gets elected, then we don't want to be part of this country anymore. And that was a trigger for the Civil War. That dude was Abraham Lincoln. And interestingly enough, homeboy was a Republican. And his biggest thing was, we have to treat every human as a human. Slavery and supporting slavery is not treating people like everyone has basic right to exist. And that was a lot of his stance. And that was legitimate division within our country. And that was years and years, hundreds of thousands of Americans, wounded and killed in a very short amount of time with all that, because that's what was going on in our political system back in the 1860s. That was quite a long time ago. And that's just an example that the division that we see today is nothing what we've had in the past of an entire group of the country deciding that if a Republican that wants to abolish slavery gets elected into office, we no longer want to be part of this country, and we will fight to the death to not be a part of this. And then to the point of, unfortunately, literally shooting the guy in the back of the head, because there was so much hatred towards him. And what's interesting is, looking back, that individual happens to be known as one of the greatest U.S. presidents that my country has ever had. And so that's just, I find interesting that we have all that going on. So it's stuff that I think about, that if I can have honor and respect towards Taliban fighters and protect them once they decide to stop fighting and they decide to surrender, or maybe they get wounded enough to where they are no longer able to effectively fight, and it's my duty, both legally and morally, to keep them alive and try to get them medical aid. And if I can do the same thing with a Russian soldier, so that way a Ukrainian gets to come home later at some point, then I can't help but be a little bit confused why a pro-Ukrainian individual, whether they're a Ukrainian refugee or full-on American citizen, whatever, can't have the same amount of respect for me because I have a difference of opinion while I'm fighting for their country, while they're in my country that I also fought for.
Well, that makes at least two of us, because I believe it's outrageous. I believe the dialogue is the key, because I've been on the front line. I'm nothing like you've done, of course, but I know people. I've talked to people. I was filming there, spending nights in there. I can't imagine anyone I know would have ever said that to you. And the fact that it didn't change your perspective, it gave you a new perspective, but it didn't change your proper attitude to Ukraine and to human values. I admire you.
I appreciate that. And for me, it helps solidify. The United States has a lot of problems, and we had problems at the beginning. We're going to have problems until our country no longer exists, or whether that's anytime soon or hundreds of years away, whatever. So we have problems. However, that attitude helps solidify how fantastic my country happens to be. That this person can say those types of things, and as long as they don't touch me in a violent manner, they are legally protected by what I fought for in the past, what the armed forces provide on a daily regular basis, what American law enforcement provide, all these protections this person has because my country is different. And I've never been to Russia, but I would have to take an educated guess that if some Russian citizen went up to a Russian war veteran and said, I disagree with you as a person, that you should go kill yourself, that I think the Russian soldier, I don't think anyone would look down if the Russian soldier just executed that person. I know that was a thing, we have evidence of that happening in Nazi Germany, where if you disagreed with what the German soldier was doing, he could shoot you in the face and nobody would care. There's nothing that anyone could do in that moment. In my country, though, we don't have that. that in my country, we have the ability and the freedom that if a private citizen wants to say some really horrible stuff to another citizen, veteran or not, that they can do so, and they are protected legally. And that I find really cool.
More or less clear with Trump's plan. What is your plan? What are you planning to do next, say, half a year?
Well, I just recently relocated to Arizona, to the looking at the Scottsdale area and looking to just get established and try to get involved with the community. I would like to get more involved with the pro-Ukrainian community there to continue to show that increasing Republican support for pro-Ukrainian ideals and policies is a benefit. And that's something that I know a year ago when interacting with a lot of the pro-Ukrainian community that we fully disagreed on. That when I explained that we should really be working hard to increase Republican support for all this stuff, because it already is a bipartisan issue, so there's a lot of Republican support for Ukraine already, and there's a lot of evidence of that. However, making more of that, I got a lot of pushback on that, and primarily when I explained that when interacting, especially with members of Congress and their offices, including their employees, their staffers, that we should show every single individual and office and employee the same exact amount of respect and appreciation, regardless if they're pro-Ukrainian or not, Democrat, Republican, Independent, that just because they're a human, they are at work that day, whether they're the actual politician, the representative, or one of the employees. And I found it very interesting that, some fully agreed that yes, equal appreciation across the board should be a standard thing. But there are some that got almost very emotional with their disagreement of that. Like some have flat out said, Republicans do not deserve any amount of respect.
All of them.
I've been in group chats where that's what the response was by someone that, just reading the name, I'm assuming is Ukrainian or maybe Ukrainian American, just based off of the name, which most of the names I can't pronounce. But I know if I can't recognize it, I can't pronounce it.
If you can't pronounce it, that makes it Ukrainian.
It's probably Ukrainian.
Yeah.
So I could be wrong there. But seeing that's what the statement is that essentially Republicans collectively do not deserve respect, then that just...
But that stereotype and that collectivism in a bad manner, it's very dangerous, I believe.
Oh, absolutely.
I believe those pro-Ukrainian people, whatever, in America and here, they should be using you as an instrument, as a tool to achieve their goals. And you're open to that. And you're not changing your good attitude towards Ukraine, even if some pro-Ukrainian people say crazy stuff about you.
And absolutely, because I encourage that dialogue. And when someone is like extremely standing on their principles about disagreeing with me, for me, I love having the dialogue of asking why and trying to understand the perspective, even if at the end of the conversation we understand we don't agree with each other, but we can understand each other. That's something that I enjoy that, and some folks are totally cool with that and to have that dialogue, and then some
are not,
are 100% not, and have made it clear verbatim, you do not deserve to be alive if you disagree with me. Which is interesting because I think Nazi Germany did that, and then the world kind of decided that's not good.
That. Many people do that way. That's a very. I believe this is the most human thing ever.
I mean, the Soviet Union did that also.
There we go. Right.
You did that. So that's some good examples, but that's kind of what I want my focus to be, is to increase the Republican support, so that way other Republicans that probably don't really know what's going on here can have a better understanding of what's going on. For me, just sharing my perspective on what I've seen firsthand. I had one Republican recently talk about how before the full-scale invasion that the Ukrainians were attacking the Donbass area. And for me, that was profound, because before this full-scale invasion, I didn't know anything. But since being here, I've understood that the full-scale invasion happened in 2022, the invasion and the war started over a decade ago in 2014.
With the annexation of Crimea.
Yes, and with Russians coming over into far eastern Ukraine, that is known now as the Donbass. And I've been to some of those front lines since being here. I fought on some of those front lines that, according to those local commanders, some of those trench lines and front lines have not really moved in the last decade. That they're kind of on an agreed schedule with the Russians. You know, mid-morning we shoot at each other a little bit, then we kind of take a break for lunch, and then mid-afternoon we shoot at each other some more, and then maybe someone hits someone, and then we just do it again tomorrow and next year and next year and next year, and no one's really attacking to try to take land or anything. So for a Republican to say that he disagrees with Ukraine's attacking the Donbass and that maybe we shouldn't be supporting Ukraine, that's a fantastic example of that person was just provided wrong information. And
assuming that this is Russian propaganda, or not necessarily.
I would assume that that is absolutely the Kremlin 100%. You know, we know the Kremlin is just good at spreading.
They're investing
huge amounts of money.
Huge amounts of money in that.
Huge,
yeah.
So, and that's some of the stuff that, like, honestly, had I not come here in person, I would not know the difference. I wouldn't really understand what a Donbass even is.
Exactly.
So that's something that for that individual, I'm able to be a first-hand source of knowledge of explaining, well, Ukrainians don't attack their own country. You know, that doesn't make any sense, right? But they are absolutely, since 2014, been attacking people that are in their country in a warfare manner. Invading. So that's just one simple example of a very close friend of mine that is Republican that just heard some wrong information that is a flat out lie. And sometimes, you know, we could do an unlimited amount of research on the internet, and you could find everything about everything on there, including all the lies as well. So sometimes, even when you spend research doing online, you can accidentally find a lot of wrong information supporting a flat out lie and may not even realize it.
Right.
That's one of the reasons why I came here years ago. And it's the primary reason why I'm here with you right now and why I was at the front lines yesterday to actually see for myself what is happening right now, because I'm not really interested in reading what the headlines are saying. I want to see for myself, so that way if I'm asked any questions here in a couple of days when I'm back at the Capitol, then I'm able to give information based off of what I actually saw when I was actually here just a few days earlier.
Matthew, thank you so very much for what you're doing, what you have been doing, what you've already done. Thank you for your service, sir.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate your support, and I appreciate that even though we disagree on some things, that we can meet on a semi-regular basis and talk about it. That's something that's really cool.
Don't forget not killing yourself. Don't follow these advices. Stay healthy and alive and stay for Ukraine. We need people like you. Thank you.
I appreciate that, sir. Thank you very much.
Well, that's all, folks, for this crazy, as usual, week in Ukraine. My name is Henry Keane, and we are UATV English, English-speaking Ukrainian state media, in constant persuasion to deliver hard truth in easy terms for you, for the whole free world, directly from Ukraine. But we ask something in return. Please like, share, and comment. Your voice matters, as it in turn helps Ukrainian voice to be heard all over the world. Meanwhile, stay safe and tune for more. We talk. Goodbye.